Ni hao. It's great to be back in Beijing. I'd like to talk about reinvention. What is reinvention? Henry Ford was asked, what is he doing? And he said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. They had no idea what a car was. We talk a lot about innovation, but most innovation is incremental. Most innovation is about creating a faster horse. Reinvention is producing the car. So I want to talk about three reinventions: the reinvention of health, of education, and of cities. Let's start with health. So let's say your father was born in 1930 here in China. He could expect to live 34 years. Now let's say your daughter was born in the year 2000. Her life expectancy was 70. That means that in just 2 generations, life expectancy in China has doubled. This is incredible. We've never seen a progress like this in history. So health has advanced tremendously, but in another sense, we're not doing very well. These are the biggest things that kill us, the 5 killers, the 5 things that are responsible for over 80% of premature deaths, which is defined as death before the age 75. They are heart and circulatory conditions, cancer, nervous system, respiratory, digestive disorders. These are the things that are killing us today. And we haven't made much progress against them. We've spent billions and billions of dollars in the war against cancer since the 1970s. But today, we still, if we have a cancer, we probably, either modern medicine won't help us at all, or it may give us 5 years of extra life. Now, why is this the case? Well, this is how health works today. Any one of those 5 conditions, at some point, it's at 0. It doesn't exist in your body. And then at some point, it could get to 100, in which case it's one of those killers. And where does health begin? It begins when we feel bad and go to the doctor. Now you see that point is quite near 100. That's because too often you go to the doctor takes lots of tests, and then he tells you you've got stage 3 or stage 4 cancer. Well, that's pretty near the end. But we have all this amazing medicine, and we're able to make some progress. But again, often we only buy a few years more of life. And this is true of all these conditions. We catch them much too late. Our health system is working at the most difficult point in the process. And that's why it's so expensive. And that's why we fail so often. So what we really need to do is move health to the beginning. We need to catch these things when they're small, when they're easy to solve. If we were able to detect cancer, a tumor, when it's only ½ centimeter big, we can take it out. We can solve that without all this technology. We will be much more successful, and most of those people will be saved. But why don't we move that to that point? Why can't we do early detection now? Well, we're missing something. We're actually missing 2 things. The first thing we're missing is a sign that we have that problem. That sign is called a biomarker. We don't have many biomarkers, and the ones we have are not very good. And then we have a bigger problem. Let's say we've discovered amazing biomarkers, something that we could look for, say, in our blood, that will tell us that we have cancer much, much earlier than when we feel bad and go to the doctor. But what's our problem there? Our problem is we don't take blood tests every week or every month or every year even. That means that we have no idea that that biomarker is there. So we need something else. We need sensors. If we had sensors that were looking for that biomarker all the time, then we could do early detection. Now, this sounds like a dream world. How can we get to this new world of transforming health, of being able to deal with all these killers? Well, the best way to understand this is a real story. This is a premature baby. Premature babies are taken care of in what's called NICU, Neonatal Intensive Care Unit. Now, in a particular hospital in Toronto called the Hospital for Sick Children, a new administrator came in. She came from the world of advertising. And in the world of advertising, they use a lot of big data. They collect a lot of data about you, and they use this data to predict what you're going to buy, what you like, what you don't like. And she thought, what if we applied this big data technique to babies? If we can predict what people are going to buy, maybe we can predict when babies will get sick. So she collected all the data from all the monitors of these babies. They're measuring heart rate, temperature, blood pressure. And sure enough, in the data, she found that when the heart rate of these babies goes stable, which you might think is a good thing, it actually was a sign of infection. And that sign of infection, that biomarker, showed that the baby was going to get an infection in 24 hours. In other words, they knew 24 hours earlier than before that the baby had infection. So they were able to apply antibiotics, and many of those babies were saved. This shows how reinvented health is going to work. So I predict that everyone in this room, all of us, if we meet again here in 10 years, maybe sooner, we will all have sensors on or inside our bodies that are essentially giving us a continuous blood test, and we will be able to discover the biomarkers that we need, and we will be able to find them, and we'll be able to conquer most of these things that are killing us. That's reinvented health. Next, education. Education is about knowledge. It has been that way forever. Now, when most people were farmers, let's say 200 years ago, they didn't really need any education, maybe a little bit. But so they didn't go to school, and they could have a good life and a job and provide for their family just from being a farmer. But then life got more complicated. We started working in factories, and we needed a bit more of an education. But let's say in 1950 in the United States, a high school degree was enough to get a good job, to have a career, to give your family a better life. But then life got more complicated again. We needed more knowledge, so we got more education. Everybody needed to go to university. And let's say in 1990, a university degree would probably guarantee you that good job. And again, you'd be able to provide for your family. But very soon, let's say today, a university degree is not enough. It's actually a tiny amount of knowledge when you think about it. How much math do we learn? How much philosophy? A little bit of language, a little bit of literature. Compared to what is out there in those fields, it's nothing, it's minuscule. Let's say actually the emperor has no clothes. Our education system is not doing very well because, as you all know, both in China and in the United States, a university degree no longer guarantees a job. In fact, many of our university graduates are serving coffee at Starbucks or things like that in China because they can't find jobs that will use their degree. So what do we do about this? What is the problem? André Schleicher is the top education official in Europe. He's the one who invented the PISA test that we know all about that compares different countries. He says the world economy does not hire you for what you know. Google, or let's say Baidu, knows everything. The world economy hires you for what you can do with what you know. But education is about knowledge. It's giving you what you know. It's not about doing things with what you know. What do we need to do that? We need strategic thinking. We need decision making. We need emotional intelligence, leadership, teamwork, communication, curiosity. These are the things we're not really getting in school. In fact, I want you to think back for a moment to when you were 6 years old. When you went to school, the first day of school, you got there and you had maximum curiosity. You had maximum motivation, maximum energy. No one had told you that you were bad at math or that you couldn't sing. As far as you were concerned, you could do anything. And you would take any risk. You would try anything. Anything that you could do with your hands that you could actually experience and feel would capture your attention. Well, that turned out to be the peak of our education. Unfortunately, from there on, all those things went downhill. To reinvent education, we have to move from this to a world more like this. We have to start doing things, not just, when we get to an MBA program and we do case studies. We have to do this throughout our educational career. We can't force kids to sit in lectures and, in fact, give them drugs so they're able to sit still and pay attention. That's the wrong way to learn. We don't learn that way. None of us learn that way. We learn from doing, and that's how we learn how to do things with what we know. So now I want to talk about cities. We're here in one of the great cities of the world, Beijing. But you all know the problem here. It's called traffic. This is the problem of every city in the world. Most things in life are getting better. Traffic is just getting worse. What can we do about traffic? Well, we think maybe the solution is to get rid of the driver. Drivers cause accidents. Drivers can't drive very fast on highways compared to computers. So maybe the driverless car is the solution. But the problem is that, first of all, predictions range all over the map. But most predictions say that it will take decades before we even have half of our cars are driverless. And it's hard to get the real benefits of driverless car until 100% are driverless. How long will that take? And also there's studies that show that we may actually have more traffic with driverless cars because we'll use them to send our kid to school. Our grandmothers will order them and for anything they want to do. We'll send them to pick up pizza. We'll have more uses for these cars, so we'll actually just have driverless traffic. So driverless cars are definitely going to be part of our future, but they're not the solution. Let's take a street like this. There are about 200 cars in this picture. But actually the drivers themselves take up very little room. Here are the drivers. You can see there are actually not many drivers on that street. And if we took all those drivers and we put them in buses, it would look like this. Just 2 buses would be enough to take all those people. But of course we have bus systems, we have trains, we have all these mass transit things, and they're not working. So mass transit is also not the solution. But there's a new idea. It's actually been around for 20 years, 30 years, but now it's actually possible to do it. And that is to put these people in a different kind of vehicle, a small vehicle that holds 1 or 2 people. This is called personal rapid transit. How does this work? Well, next slide. This is how it looks. Those little vehicles are actually flying along a rail. Could be 60, 80, 100 kilometers an hour, and they will take you to your destination from where you live to where you're going without stopping, without any schedule. And the way this works is you build a grid of this stuff that can cover the whole city so that a station is very close to you wherever you live and wherever you work. And this, as you can see, this kind of system has the capacity, more capacity than a train, a bus, and it can carry all the people that are now using cars and mass transit. Now this is something that's hard to understand, it's hard to believe, it's kind of like too good to believe. But I promise you that within 5 years, the first cities will have solved traffic using this system. And within 10 years, this city, Beijing, could solve traffic, and this city could be a place where you can breathe, you can move, and you can see the sky. And not only that, the next thing that would happen is we would reclaim all that territory taken up by cars. 40% of our cities is devoted to cars, to parking, to the care and feeding of these vehicles. Once we're able to kick the cars out of our cities, we can turn them into the kind of cities we love, where you can walk around, where you can sit at a cafe, where you can be creative. This is where creative people like to be, and this is where creativity comes from. We can have those cities when we get rid of not the driver, but the car. So here's my prediction. I think the first countries that reinvent any of these things, health, education, or cities, will be considered the most innovative countries in the world. I actually think China could be one of the first countries to do this. And the good news is these things do not need any new technology. We have the technology for sensors. The education, we don't even need new technology at all. It's just about changing our way of thinking. We have the technology to do these rapid transit systems, this new transportation system. What we need to make this happen is leadership and imagination. Thank you.